The river had already begun to lose the shape it once held, pushing outward in slow, restless sweeps that swallowed grass and pressed the reeds down flat. At the center of that constant motion, something small remained fixed in place. It was not the stillness of wood worn smooth by water, but something compact and pressed close against the reeds, soaked entirely through, its fur darkened and matted. The cub trembled in brief, uneven bursts, each one fighting against the cold current that pushed past without stopping. All around, the water carried branches, leaves, and foam, the sound never settling into quiet, only lifting and falling like breath that could not find rest. From the forest's edge, a ranger moved along the flooded bank with slow steps, scanning for anything the water might carry that could become danger downstream. Years of walking this path had taught his eyes to look for movement, but also for the lack of it. Rivers that lived rarely held anything that did not push back. When his gaze found the small shape pressed into the reeds, the difference was felt before thought could form. He slowed, boots pressing gently into softened earth, listening not for cries, but for the way water moved around something that did not move with it. The cub did not call out. Its mouth opened once, releasing only a thin sound that disappeared beneath the river's voice. Its eyes were open, wide, and unfocused, fixed more on the moving water than on anything beyond. One front leg twitched, then stilled again, muscles worn thin from holding against the flow. The stripes running along its side were nearly hidden beneath mud and wet fur, but their pattern marked it without question as a tiger cub, much too young to have come this far alone. The ranger lowered himself, keeping space between them, letting the scene take shape before him. Flood seasons often scattered the young of the forest, washing away paths learned only weeks before. Somewhere upstream, a mother would be moving along higher ground. Her calls carried off by wind and rain, her scent washed away by water. The cub lifted its head weakly as the ranger shifted his weight, not in recognition, but by reflex, answering to vibration more than sight. Its body pressed deeper into the reeds, claws scraping softly against stems wet and bending but not breaking. A low voice reached across the water, barely louder than the rain, meant less to calm than to offer something steady. "It's okay," he said quietly, not moving closer yet. The words were even, carrying no urgency that might startle a body balanced between holding on and letting go. The cub's ears pressed flat briefly, then softened, its slowing in breaths so small they could almost be imagined. Water kept rising, climbing the cub's side, lifting loose fur into small waves. The ranger watched where water met body, measuring time instead of distance. Each minute shifted what was possible. He moved again, placing one hand carefully against the reeds to feel their hold. The cub trembled, then stilled, blinking against drops that clung to its lashes. Above, the rain softened, thinning into lighter strands. The river did not grow quiet, but its surface calmed, carrying the pale sky between its waves. Farther back, beyond the flooded grass, the forest stood dark and waiting, its sounds muted by rain and distance. The cub stayed pressed against the reeds, small and breathing, as the current moved past, carrying the day forward without pause. Somewhere out of sight, birds began to call again, and the wind shifted through flattened grass, lifting the scent of wet earth, holding the moment open, suspended as light moved across the water and did not fade. The walk away from the river was slow and careful, shaped by the ground as much as by will. Water still covered most of the bank, but higher ground waited just beyond the reeds, firm enough to hold without sinking. The ranger adjusted his hold with care, keeping the cub level, supporting its chest and hindquarters, so gravity would not take what little strength remained. The cub did not resist. Its head rested against his arm, heavy with tiredness, whiskers dripping steadily as shallow breaths rose and fell against damp cloth. Behind them, the river continued without pause, folding back into itself, already washing away the place where the cub had been pinned. Ahead, the forest edge hung in a soft gray curtain of rain. It was there, from somewhere out of sight, that a sound came, low and restrained, not a call meant to travel far, but one meant to be found. It passed through the rain without haste, steady and controlled, carrying the weight of presence more than alarm. The ranger paused without thinking, letting the sound move through the air and into the ground beneath him. The cub shifted before any sound left it. One paw moved weakly, claws reaching out and pulling back against empty air. Its head lifted slightly, nose turning toward the forest, drawing in the damp scent mixed with earth and leaves. The breath that followed was light, uneven, but it held. The cub did not call out. Its response stayed small, limited to movement, to the quiet work of staying connected without drawing notice. The ranger kept walking, angling slightly away from the sound, not toward it, understanding the space that was needed. Mothers did not come close when unfamiliar shapes stood between them and their young. The cub shifted again, lighter than expected, bones too clear beneath wet fur. He adjusted his hold once more, careful not to press where ribs moved too easily beneath his hands. "Easy," he said softly, the word barely formed before the rain took it. They reached higher ground where grass lay flat but dry enough to hold warmth against the cold. The ranger lowered the cub onto the earth with the same care he had carried it, easing his support away only when its body settled into the grass. The cub lay on its side, chest flickering, eyes half closed now, blinking slowly against drops still falling from its face. Its tail moved once, then lay still, curved loosely along its hind leg. The sound from the forest came again, closer this time. Though still unseen, it did not repeat with insistence. It held, then faded, replaced by the hush of rain on leaves and the distant movement of branches shifting under their own weight. The cub's ears turned toward the sound, then relaxed. Its breathing steadied by degrees too small to measure without watching. The trembling that had moved through its body eased, leaving behind a fragile stillness that was not emptiness, but rest. The ranger stepped back, widening the space between himself and the cub, keeping his shape low and calm. He stayed present without drawing closer, letting the forest take back its place. The cub did not try to rise. It stayed where it had been placed, holding its strength, eyes drifting shut and open again, answering scent and sound with quiet attention. As the rain thinned further, light reached through the canopy, pale and spread thin. Grass lifted slowly, releasing water back into the soil. Somewhere deeper in the trees, the low sound moved again, no longer reaching the clearing. The cub lay breathing on the higher ground, small chest rising and falling as wind moved through the grass around it, carrying the damp scent of earth toward the forest, where unseen movement continued, patient and waiting beneath the sky beginning to clear. The choice to lift the cub again came without signal or words, shaped by timing more than thought. The ground beneath her was higher, but not high enough. Water still moved through the grass, quiet but steady, and the air carried the kind of cold that settled into small bodies faster than it left them. Hands moved into view slowly, palms open, fingers spread to show their shape before touching. Training shaped every motion, learned through repetition and restraint, through knowing how easily haste could become harm. When the hands touched her, they did so with even pressure, one beneath the chest, the other beneath the hindquarters, lifting in one smooth motion that did not pull or startle. The cub answered by giving way. There was no stiffening, no pulling back. Her weight settled fully into the hold, heavier than her size suggested, exhaustion filling the spaces where resistance might have been. Her head rolled gently to one side, resting against a sleeve already darkened by rain, whiskers flat and dripping. Her eyes stayed half open, unfocused, following light more than shape. The muscles along her neck flickered once, then stilled. Breathing stayed shallow but steady. Each rise of her chest small and even. A faint sound left her throat. Not a call, not a cry, just air moving where it needed to go. Her paws hung loose, toes curled inward, claws tucked without effort. The rain began to ease, its sound shifting from constant to scattered, drops striking leaves with more space between them. The change was small, but the forest answered. The air lightened. The weight of sound lifted just enough to notice. The person holding the cub adjusted his stance, stepping carefully, placing each foot where the ground held firm. There was no rush in his steps. Speed had no place here. Staying steady mattered more than covering ground. A phrase slipped out quietly, shaped by habit more than intention. "It's all right," he said, not loud enough to carry, not meant to calm the forest or the sky, only to steady his own rhythm. The cub did not move in response, but her breathing shifted, the space between breaths growing slightly longer, the rise of her chest becoming less uneven. Her body stayed loose, trusting the moment without understanding it. As they walked, water slid from her fur in thin lines, leaving dark marks along the cloth beneath her. The smell of wet earth grew stronger with each step away from the river's edge. Grass brushed against her side, bending under her weight, leaving behind a brief shape that filled slowly as water drained back into the soil. Her tail swayed once with the motion, then stilled again. The forest ahead stayed watchful but quiet. No shapes moved into view. No sound followed them closely. Presence lingered without intrusion, held at a distance shaped by instinct and experience. The cub's ears flicked once, then settled, angled neither forward nor back, resting in a neutral line against her head. When they reached a place where the ground rose gently and stayed dry beneath the surface, the movement slowed further, knees bent carefully. The cub was lowered with the same control that had lifted her, her body guided until it met the earth, grass folding beneath her side. Hands stayed for a moment longer, keeping contact until her weight settled fully and evenly. Only then did they pull back, leaving warmth behind without claiming it. She lay still, eyes fluttering once before settling half-closed again. Her chest kept its quiet work. Rain fell now only in scattered drops, slipping from leaves and branches, tapping softly against the ground. Wind moved through the grass and low waves, carrying scent and sound away from the clearing. The cub stayed where she was placed, breathing, resting, held by the moment as the rain eased and the forest exhaled, letting light begin to filter back through thinning clouds. The forest announced her coming before she was seen. Small birds stopped their calls mid-note, leaving silence where sound had been moments before. Leaves shifted without wind, branches parting just enough to change the shape of the tree line. Even the ground seemed to pause, holding moisture and scent without release. At the edge where grass gave way to shadow, a form took shape slowly, not emerging all at once, but gathering itself from stripes, muscle, and restraint. The tigress stepped forward with measured precision. Her body stayed low, weight balanced evenly across each limb, tail hanging heavy and still behind her. She did not hurry. She did not pause. Each step closed distance without forcing it. Her attention held completely to the small shape lying ahead. Her ears stayed forward, not flat, not loose, tuned to everything at once. Rain slid from her coat in thin trails, darkening the soil beneath her paws. The cub stirred as the forest changed. Her head lifted slightly, chin brushing grass, eyes opening wider now, catching movement at the edge where light and shadow met. A soft sound left her throat, brief and thin, more breath than voice. Her body did not try to rise. Energy stayed precious, spent only on recognition. One forepaw moved weakly, claws reaching out just enough to touch the earth. The humans did not move. They stayed where they were, shapes low, hands open and empty. Training kept them still, but so did something quieter, an understanding shaped by moments like this that could not be hurried or directed. Space was the only thing they could offer now. Space and time. The tigress closed the remaining distance until she stood just beyond the cub, close enough for scent to carry clearly between them. Her nose lowered, drawing in the air around the cub's face and body, reading what water and hands had changed and what remained unchanged beneath it. Her whiskers brushed the cub's side, testing, confirming. The cub answered by shifting closer, pressing her small body into the grass, her breath quickening for a moment before settling again. A voice broke the stillness briefly, no louder than the rain slipping from leaves. Easy, it said, not directed outward, but downward, grounding the movement of hands that lifted once more. The cub was raised gently, supported fully, her body giving way again, eyes fixed now on the tigress, unblinking. The space between them closed to nothing. The air felt tight, pulled thin by attention. The cub was lowered onto wild earth with care that mirrored the forest's own restraint. Grass folded beneath her weight, damp but firm. Hands released slowly, pulling back without sudden absence. The cub lay on her side for a breath, then turned slightly, orienting herself toward the tigress. Her breathing steadied, chest rising, and falling in a rhythm that matched the quiet around her. The tigress stepped forward at once, placing her body between the cub and everything else. She lowered her head, touching her nose to the cub's neck, then her side, tracing the shape that was hers. The cub answered with movement, pressing closer, legs tucking in, tail moving once before resting. No sound passed between them. None was needed. The forest took up again gradually. Birds called from deeper branches. Wind moved through leaves, releasing water and soft drops. The tigress lifted her head briefly, eyes sweeping the clearing one last time, then turned, guiding the cub with a nudge of her shoulder. Together they moved back toward shadow, stripes dissolving into pattern and bark until only flattened grass and quiet remained. At the clearing's edge, light shifted as clouds thinned, a pale glow settling over wet earth. The grass lifted slowly, rainwater sinking back into soil. Somewhere out of sight, movement continued, steady and unbroken as the forest breathed again, and the day eased forward, leaving only the sound of wind passing gently through leaves. The cub stayed still for a moment after the tigress turned, as if standing required permission from more than just muscle. Then her 4 legs pushed forward, paws slipping slightly in wet grass before finding hold. She rose unsteadily, hind legs lagging a breath behind, body swaying once before balance returned. The movement was clumsy, unfinished, but it carried direction. Her head stayed low, eyes fixed on the space where her mother's tail moved through the grass ahead of her. The tigress did not look back. Her pace stayed measured, slow enough to be followed, firm enough to be trusted. She passed into taller growth where water no longer pulled, where the earth held its shape and the grass stood upright, brushing against her sides without bending. The cub followed in short, uneven steps, pausing once to gather herself, then continuing, guided by scent and nearness more than sight alone. Each step carried her farther from the river's reach. As they moved, the cub's stride strengthened. Her legs aligned more cleanly beneath her, trembling easing with each forward step. She stayed close, nearly touching, her shoulder brushing against her mother's hind leg when the grass thickened. The tigress adjusted without pause, widening her path by inches, making room without breaking stride. Together, they entered the tall grass fully, bodies dissolving into shifting lines and shadow until only the movement of stems marked their passage. At the clearing edge, the river kept to its course. Water slid past reeds and stones, carrying branches stripped of bark. Leaves pressed flat and turning slowly in the current. Light reflected off its surface in broken patterns, bright where clouds thinned, dull where shadow lingered. Nothing in its movement suggested what had passed moments before. The river did not hold memory. It only moved forward. The humans stayed where they were, still shaped low against the land. No one spoke. There was no signal to mark completion. They watched the grass until it settled back into place, until even the faint disturbance of passage was gone. The space where the cub had stood moments earlier now held only damp earth and bent blades, already lifting again as water drained away. Time stretched without demand. The rain had stopped completely now, leaving behind a quiet that felt earned rather than empty. Somewhere upstream, water broke against a fallen trunk with a steady rhythm. In the distance, birds resumed their calls, tentative at first, then more assured, filling gaps left by earlier silence. The forest reclaimed its sound gradually without ceremony. Eventually, one figure shifted weight, straightening slowly, joints stiff from holding still. Another followed, movements careful, as if sudden motion might undo what had been allowed to settle. They turned away from the grass, from the place where wild earth had briefly held something fragile, and then released it. Their steps back toward the riverbank were unhurried, boots finding familiar ground, leaving shallow impressions that filled with water almost immediately. Behind them, the tall grass stood undisturbed. Somewhere beyond it, movement continued, unseen and untracked, guided by instinct older than flood or boundary. The cub walked now where water could not reach, her steps sheltered by height and density, her body close to warmth that did not need to be named. The river carried on unchanged, reflecting the pale sky as clouds thinned and light spread wider across its surface. Debris drifted past, then cleared, leaving only ripples and moving brightness. Wind passed through the grass in slow waves, bending it gently, erasing edges, softening every mark. The day moved forward, and with it the forest, holding within it a moment that would not return, but would not be lost.